The first time my husband mentioned the retreat, it sounded harmless, almost boring, actually. We were in the kitchen on a Sunday night, both of us half paying attention to a football game playing quietly in the living room. I was rinsing dishes, and he was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone like he always did after dinner. "Hey," he said casually, like he was mentioning a grocery item we forgot to buy. "Mark told me about this spiritual retreat thing up in Northern California. Guys from his company go every year." I didn't even turn around at first. "A retreat?" "Yeah, like a reset. Phones off, meditation, hiking, journaling, all that stuff." I laughed a little because if you knew my husband Ryan, the idea of him journaling in the woods sounded ridiculous. Ryan was a numbers guy, corporate finance, Excel spreadsheets, conference calls, and the occasional golf weekend with clients. The most spiritual thing he ever did was complain about traffic while listening to a podcast. But when I looked back at him, he didn't look like he was joking. He actually looked hopeful. "I've just been feeling kind of burned out," he said. "You know, work's been insane. I think I need to clear my head." We'd been married 9 years at that point, together for 12. And yeah, work had been brutal for him lately. Late nights, constant stress. His company had gone through layoffs the previous winter, and he'd somehow survived by absorbing 3 other people's responsibilities. So I dried my hands and leaned against the counter. "How long is it?" I asked. 5 days. 5 days of meditation? He shrugged. "Apparently there's yoga too." I snorted. Ryan doing yoga was an image I couldn't even process. But he kept talking, explaining how it was some invite-only program outside a small town north of Sacramento. No social media, no work emails, just quiet reflection and reconnecting with your purpose. It sounded like the kind of thing burned-out executives convinced themselves would fix their lives. Still, he seemed excited, nervous even. And I loved him, so I smiled and said, "You should go." That was about 6 weeks before everything started feeling off. At first, it was little things. Ryan began running in the mornings again, something he hadn't done in years. He bought new hiking boots, started reading these self-improvement books with titles like The Courage to Begin Again. One night, I came downstairs at midnight and found him sitting at the dining table writing in a notebook. Actually writing. Ryan never wrote anything that wasn't a work email. "What are you doing?" I asked, half asleep. He closed the notebook quickly, almost instinctively. "Just prepping for the retreat." "For meditation?" "They have these exercises," he said, like reflecting on past relationships and choices and stuff. Something about the way he said that made my stomach tighten just a little. "Past relationships?" I repeated. He shrugged like it was nothing. "You know, processing things." I didn't push it, at least not right then. But later that night, lying in bed next to him while he slept, my brain kept circling the same thought. Past relationships. Ryan didn't have a huge dating history before me. A few college girlfriends, some casual stuff in his early 20s. Except for one, Lauren. They dated for 4 years before me, college sweethearts. Everyone assumed they'd get married. Then something happened, Ryan never gave the full story, and they broke up a year before we met. I'd ask about her early in our relationship. He always brushed it off. "She moved to the East Coast," he once said. "That chapter's closed." I hadn't thought about her in years, until that night. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. People grow, people reflect. That's what these retreats are for, right? The week before he left, things got even stranger. Ryan started working out obsessively, like 2-hour gym sessions, new clothes, a haircut that cost way more than he normally spent. When I teased him about it, he smiled. Midlife crisis prep. Year 38. Exactly. But there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. Anticipation, like someone counting down to a big event. The morning he left for the retreat, he woke up before sunrise. I heard him moving around downstairs and eventually got up to make coffee. He was standing in the kitchen, already dressed, duffel bag by the door. For a second, he just stared at me, like he was memorizing my face. "You're up early," I said. "Couldn't sleep." I poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed him one. "You nervous about your spiritual awakening?" I joked. He smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. "Something like that." We stood there quietly for a minute. Then he hugged me. Not the quick goodbye hug we usually did when one of us traveled. This one lingered, tight. His arms wrapped around me like he was holding on to something. "You okay?" I asked into his shoulder. "Yeah," he said softly. Then he kissed my forehead. "I love you." That wasn't unusual. Ryan always said it before trips. But the way he said it felt heavier, like there was something underneath the words. His Uber arrived a few minutes later. I watched him load his bag into the trunk and wave from the curb before the car disappeared down the street. I went back inside, finished my coffee, and started my workday. For the first 2 days, everything was normal. Ryan had warned me there wouldn't be much contact because phones were discouraged, but he sent a couple quick texts. Day 1, Made it. Place is beautiful. Day 2, did a long hike today. Mind clearing. Nothing weird. Then day 3 happened. I was at work when I got a message request on Instagram from someone I didn't recognize. Her profile picture was a woman about my age with dark blonde hair and this confident, polished look, like someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of looking effortlessly put together. Her name was Lauren Mitchell. The name alone made my chest tighten. I opened the message. It was just one line. Hi, Emily. I think we need to talk about Ryan. For a long minute, I just stared at my phone. Lauren. The Lauren. My brain tried to convince me there had to be a million Lauren Mitchells in the world, but something in my gut already knew. I clicked her profile. Private account. Only 43 posts. But the bio said she lived in San Diego, and the tiny circular preview images visible along the bottom told a story even before I could open them. Beach photos, wine glasses, smiling selfies, and then one picture that made my stomach drop. It was a close-up of her left hand resting on someone's arm. There was a ring on her finger, a very new ring. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as I stared at the message again. Hi, Emily. I think we need to talk about Ryan. I typed back slowly. Who is this? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then another message. You probably know me as Lauren. The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter. My fingers hovered over the screen. What about you and Ryan? This time it took longer for her to reply. Long enough for my imagination to spiral into a dozen terrible possibilities. Finally, the message came through. I didn't realize he hadn't told you. My chest tightened. Told me what? Another pause. Then she sent a photo. When it loaded, my entire body went cold. It was Ryan. Standing in front of what looked like a small white outdoor chapel, surrounded by redwood trees. He was wearing a dark suit, and he was smiling. Standing next to him was Lauren, in a wedding dress. For a long time, I just stared at the photo on my phone, like my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. Ryan looked happy, not nervous, not confused, happy. The kind of smile people have when they're standing at the edge of something they've wanted for a long time. Lauren was holding his arm. Her dress was simple but elegant, white with lace along the shoulders, the kind of dress someone clearly spent months picking out. Behind them was a small wooden sign that said, Welcome guests. Guests. Not a retreat, not meditation, a wedding. My wedding ring suddenly felt heavy on my finger. I zoomed in on the picture. Ryan's suit looked new. The tie was one I'd never seen before. His hair was perfectly styled, the way he usually was only for work conferences or formal events. Except this wasn't a conference. My hands started shaking. I typed back before I could stop myself. What is this? The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. It's from yesterday, she wrote. I assumed you knew. Something inside my chest snapped tight. Knew what? Another pause. Then the message came through slowly, like each word had been carefully chosen. Ryan and I got married yesterday afternoon. For a second, I thought I might actually throw up. I was sitting in my office at work, the normal sounds of people talking and typing just outside the glass walls, and it felt like the floor had disappeared underneath me. Married. Yesterday, while he was supposedly meditating in the woods. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I typed again. You're lying. The reply came almost instantly. I'm not. Then another photo appeared. This one was closer. Ryan and Lauren standing under an arch of flowers, a man in a suit between them holding a small book. Ryan was sliding a ring onto her finger. My vision blurred. For a moment, I wondered if this was some kind of elaborate prank, maybe someone using old photos, maybe AI, maybe... But deep down, I already knew the truth. Ryan didn't go on a retreat. Ryan went to marry his ex-girlfriend. My husband of 9 years married someone else while I was sitting at home doing laundry and answering work emails. My hands were trembling so badly I had to sit down. I stared at the messages again, trying to force my brain to catch up. Finally, I typed the only thing that made sense. Why are you sending this to me? It took almost a full minute before she answered. Because I found out about you last night. My stomach twisted. What? Another message came through. Ryan told me he was divorced. The words felt like someone had slammed a door in my chest. Divorced. Not separated. Not complicated. Divorced. I could feel anger starting to creep in now, pushing past the shock. You married a man without checking if he was actually divorced, I wrote. 3 dots appeared again. He said the paperwork was finalized 2 years ago. 2 years. 2 years ago, we had been on a vacation in Oregon celebrating our 7th anniversary. 2 years ago, we had talked about maybe buying a bigger house. 2 years ago, we were still sleeping in the same bed every night. My hands curled into fists. You believed that? Her response took longer this time. Emily, I didn't even know your name until yesterday. I felt something cold settle into my chest. Then how did you find me? The typing bubble appeared again. I saw a notification on Ryan's phone. My pulse spiked. What notification? Your contact popped up while he was in the shower this morning. Emily, heart. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Lauren kept typing. I asked him who you were. I stared at the screen. And? The reply came slowly. He said you were his sister. My mouth actually fell open. My sister? I let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a choke. Your sister? I typed, seriously? I didn't believe him, she replied. Clearly. I checked his phone. My heart pounded harder. And? Another pause. Then the message appeared. I found your wedding photos. The room felt silent around me. I imagined Lauren sitting somewhere, probably in the same retreat location, scrolling through Ryan's phone while the reality of what she had done started sinking in. I pictured her finding pictures of our wedding, our first house, Christmas mornings, birthday dinners. 9 years of a life Ryan apparently decided to erase. So what happened after that? I asked. She didn't respond right away. When the message finally appeared, it was shorter than I expected. I confronted him. And? Things got ugly. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my forehead. Ugly. That word could mean a lot of things. Is he still there? I asked. Yes. Of course he was. Probably sitting in some peaceful forest lodge, pretending his entire life hadn't just detonated. Did he explain any of this? I asked. 3 dots. Then, he said he was going to tell you. My laugh came out loud enough that someone walking past my office glanced inside. Yeah? I typed. When? After the honeymoon? Lauren didn't reply immediately. Then she wrote something that made my stomach twist again. He said you two were basically already over. Over. I looked down at my wedding ring again. Last week, Ryan had kissed me goodbye in our kitchen. Last month, we'd gone to dinner with friends and argued about whether we should adopt a dog. 2 months ago, we were planning a summer trip to Colorado. Over. Did it look like we were over in those photos you saw? I asked. A long pause. Then finally, no. I closed my eyes. For the first time since this started, the shock was beginning to morph into something sharper. Betrayal, humiliation, rage. How long have you two been back together? I asked. Almost a year. A year. My chest tightened. Did he ever mention being married? No. Did he ever mention me at all? No. I stared at the screen. A year. 12 months of lies. Work trips, late meetings, gym sessions. All the times he'd come home late saying he'd grab drinks with coworkers. All the weekends he'd gone golfing. My brain was suddenly replaying the past year like a film where every scene had a hidden meaning I hadn't noticed before. How did you reconnect? I asked. Another pause. Facebook. Of course. Lauren continued typing. He messaged me last spring. What did he say? The typing bubble blinked for a while. Finally, the answer appeared. He said he'd never stop thinking about me. I felt something inside my chest go hollow. He said he made the biggest mistake of his life letting me go. My hands went cold. He said he wanted a second chance. The room around me suddenly felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life collapse from a distance. I typed one last question. So the retreat? Lauren replied immediately. Was a wedding venue. I swallowed hard. How many people were there? About 30. 30 people had watched my husband marry someone else. 30 strangers clapping while he slid a ring onto another woman's finger. And the entire time I was at home thinking he was journaling about self-discovery. My phone buzzed again before I could respond. Another message from Lauren. There's something else you should know. A heavy feeling settled in my stomach. What? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then the message came through. He's coming home tomorrow. I stared at the screen. Ryan wasn't disappearing into some new life with Lauren. He was planning to come back. Back to our house, back to our bed, back to me, like nothing had happened. For the rest of that day, I barely remember what I did. I know I left work early. I remember driving home, but I couldn't tell you a single thing I passed on the road. My mind kept replaying the same images over and over again. Ryan in that suit, Ryan smiling, Ryan sliding a ring onto Lauren's finger, while I sat 200 miles away thinking my husband was meditating in the woods. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were numb on the steering wheel. Our house looked exactly the same as it always did. The same gray siding, the same flower bed I'd planted the previous spring, the same porch light Ryan always forgot to turn off during the day. Nothing about it looked like the home of someone whose husband had secretly married another woman. I sat in the car for almost 10 minutes before going inside. When I finally opened the front door, the silence hit me first. Ryan wasn't there, obviously, but the house still carried the normal traces of our life together. His running shoes by the stairs, his jacket hanging on the hook near the door, the coffee mug he'd used the morning he left sitting in the sink. It made everything feel even more unreal. I walked slowly through the house like I was visiting someone else's life. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. 9 years of memories sitting quietly in every corner. By the time I reached our bedroom, the shock had started to wear off, and something darker was taking its place. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at Ryan's dresser. For a long time, I didn't move. Then I stood up and opened the top drawer. Inside were the usual things. Watches, a few loose receipts. The leather wallet he used when he traveled so he didn't lose his main one. Nothing strange. I opened the second drawer. T-shirts, gym shorts, socks. Everything looked normal. But the feeling in my stomach told me something wasn't. I moved to his nightstand next. Inside the drawer were random things. Chapstick, an old phone charger, a half-empty bottle of ibuprofen. Then my eyes landed on something I'd never seen before. A small black box. For a second, my brain refused to make the connection. But my hands were already moving. I picked it up. The box was light. Velvet. Jewelry box. My chest tightened as I slowly opened it. Inside was a ring. Gold band. Simple. Elegant. Definitely not cheap. And definitely not mine. I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked down at my own hand. My wedding ring was still there. Ryan had bought another one. For Lauren. And it had been sitting in our bedroom drawer. In the house we shared. My stomach twisted so hard I had to sit back down. I suddenly felt like every surface in the room was contaminated with lies. Every object had a hidden story I hadn't noticed before. The gym bag he'd started using again last summer. The weekends he'd claimed were work conferences. The new cologne he'd bought that he said was on sale. All of it suddenly meant something different. I picked up the ring box again. Ryan had planned this. Not impulsively. Not emotionally. Carefully. Secretly. For months. My phone buzzed in my hand. Lauren again. Have you talked to him yet? I stared at the message. No, I wrote back. Another bubble appeared. He doesn't know I told you. I let out a slow breath. Good. What are you going to do? That question hung on the screen. What was I going to do? For the past 4 hours, I'd been operating in pure shock mode. My brain hadn't gotten far enough to plan anything. But now the anger was starting to settle into something sharper. Something controlled. I'm going to wait. I typed. Wait for what? For him to come home. 3 dots appeared. You're not going to call him? No. Why? I looked around our bedroom again. At the bed we'd shared. At the dresser full of his clothes. At the closet where his suits were hanging neatly in a row. Because I want to see his face. I wrote. Lauren didn't respond for a moment. Then she sent another message. I left. My fingers paused over the screen. You left the retreat? Yes. Did he try to stop you? No. That answer made my chest tighten again. No? No. A second later, another message came through. He seemed relieved. Relieved. Like a man whose secret had finally exploded. And now he didn't have to keep juggling 2 lives. I suddenly felt a wave of disgust so strong it made my skin crawl. Where are you now? I asked. Driving back to San Diego. A long pause. Then she added something unexpected. I'm sorry. I stared at the words. Part of me wanted to scream at her. Another part of me realized she'd been lied to just as much as I had. You didn't know. I typed finally. No.
I believed her. If Lauren had known about me, she never would have messaged me like this. She thought she married a divorced man. Instead, she married someone who was already married. My phone buzzed again. "One more thing," she wrote. My stomach tightened. "What?" He took the ring off after I confronted him. I frowned. "What ring?" "The one he put on yesterday." The air felt thick in my lungs. He said it was complicated. Of course he did. Everything was complicated when you were lying to two women at once. "Did he say anything about coming back to you?" I asked. "No." "Did he say anything about me?" A pause. Then, he said he needed to fix things. Fix things. Like our 9-year marriage was a plumbing problem. I set my phone down and leaned back on the bed. The ceiling fan spun slowly above me. Ryan would be home tomorrow, walking through the same front door he'd walked through thousands of times before. Except this time I would know everything, and he wouldn't know that I knew. The thought sent a strange calm through my body. For the first time all day, my mind felt clear. I got up and walked back into the living room. Then I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. If Ryan had spent the last year building a secret life behind my back, I wanted to see how deep it went. The first thing I checked was our bank account. At first glance, everything looked normal. Bills paid, mortgage, groceries. Then I scrolled back, and there it was. A series of charges over the past 8 months that suddenly made my chest tighten. Flights, hotels, restaurants in cities Ryan had supposedly never visited. San Diego. Over and over again. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. San Diego. Lauren lived in San Diego. My stomach sank as realization spread through me. Ryan hadn't just reconnected with her online. He'd been flying across the country to see her, using the same card Lee used for groceries and utilities, using the same account that paid our mortgage. A year of secret trips, secret weekends, secret lies stacked on top of each other until they built an entire second relationship. And then the final piece appeared on the statement. A payment made 3 weeks ago, $12,400, to a place called Redwood Valley Retreat Center. I stared at the number. That wasn't a meditation retreat. That was a wedding venue deposit.
My husband had used our money to marry someone else. The calm inside me hardened into something colder. Ryan would be home tomorrow evening. He would walk through that door expecting the same life he left behind, the same wife, the same house, the same normal routine. He would think he still controlled the story. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized something. He had absolutely no idea what was waiting for him. The next day moved in slow motion. I barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed another memory that suddenly meant something different. A random Thursday night when Ryan said he had to stay late at work. The conference in Phoenix last fall that suddenly lined up perfectly with one of those San Diego charges on the credit card. The new hiking boots he bought for his retreat. The way he hugged me before leaving, like he was saying goodbye. By morning, the anger inside me had settled into something calm and sharp. It wasn't explosive anymore. It was focused. Ryan's flight was scheduled to land at 5:40 p.m. He texted me that morning like everything in the world was normal. "Heading to the airport. Miss you." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Miss you too. Drive safe when you land." If he suspected anything, he didn't show it. The day dragged. I cleaned the house slowly, not because it needed cleaning, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Around noon, I took the ring box from his nightstand and placed it carefully on the kitchen counter, right in the center. Then I printed the credit card statement showing the San Diego trips and set that beside it. Next to that, I placed my laptop, open to the photo Lauren had sent me. Ryan smiling under that arch of flowers. Ryan marrying someone else. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. By the time 6:30 rolled around, I heard the familiar sound of his car pulling into the driveway. My heart started pounding again, but this time it felt different, controlled, deliberate. The front door opened a moment later. "Hey," Ryan called casually as he stepped inside. "I'm back." His voice sounded exactly the same as it always had, relaxed, familiar, comfortable. He dropped his duffel bag by the door and walked into the kitchen. The moment he saw me sitting at the table, he smiled. "Hey, you."
For half a second, everything felt eerily normal. Then his eyes drifted to the counter, the ring box, the printed statement, the laptop screen. I watched the exact moment his brain started connecting the dots. The smile faded, slowly. "What's this?" he asked carefully. I didn't answer right away. I just watched him. 9 years of marriage standing in front of me, pretending not to understand. Ryan walked closer to the counter. His eyes moved from the ring box to the printed statement, to the photo on the laptop. The color drained from his face. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Emily," I cut him off. "Was the ceremony nice?" His eyes closed briefly. "Listen?" "No," I said calmly. "You listen." He looked at me again. And for the first time since I'd known him, Ryan looked genuinely scared. "You married her yesterday," I continued. He didn't deny it. "That wasn't a retreat. That was a wedding venue." Silence. "You've been flying to San Diego for almost a year." Still silence. "You told her you were divorced." Ryan rubbed a hand across his face. "Emily, it's complicated." I actually laughed. The sound surprised even me. "You married another woman yesterday," I said. "There's nothing complicated about that." He leaned against the counter like his legs might give out. "I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. No answer. "Before the honeymoon?" I added. Ryan's jaw tightened. "There wasn't going to be a honeymoon." I stared at him. "You're right," I said, "because you came home to your wife." The word wife seemed to hit him harder than anything else. "Lauren contacted you," he said quietly. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "That explains it." I felt anger flare again. "That explains it?" He ran both hands through his hair. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen." I stood up from the table. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said coldly. "Did your secret double marriage not go according to plan?" His voice cracked slightly. "I was trying to figure things out." "You figured them out pretty well," I replied. "You married her." He looked at the floor. "I thought maybe I could fix things with us." The room went silent. "With us?" I repeated slowly. Ryan finally looked at me again. "I never stopped caring about you." The words hung in the air like something rotten. "You never stopped caring about me?" I said. "So you married someone else?" His voice was desperate now. "Lauren and I have history. I got caught up in it. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I said. "Yes. You flew across the country for a year." Silence. "You proposed." Silence. "You planned a wedding." Silence. "You stood in front of 30 people and said vows." Ryan didn't move. "That's not a mistake," I said quietly. "That's a second life." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know how to end things." "With who?" I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. That was answer enough. I walked over to the counter and picked up the ring box. "This was for her?" Ryan nodded slowly. I held it up between us. "You kept it in our bedroom." He didn't respond. I set the box back down. "Did you ever think about what would happen when this blew up?" "I thought I could handle it." "Handle it how?" Ryan looked exhausted now. "I thought maybe Lauren and I would realize it wasn't right." My chest tightened. "So you married her to see if it felt right?" His silence was deafening. I shook my head slowly. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You betrayed both of us." He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to argue with. Finally, he asked the question I knew was coming. "What happens now?" I studied his face. The man I had built a life with. The man who apparently thought he could juggle 2 marriages like scheduling meetings on a calendar. Then I pushed the printed statement toward him. "You spent $12,000 of our money on that wedding." Ryan didn't speak. "You lied to 2 women for a year." Silence. "And you married someone else while still married to me." His shoulders slumped. I took off my wedding ring slowly. For a moment, I just looked at it. 9 years. Then I placed it gently on the counter beside the other ring. "What happens now?" I said calmly. "Is you call a lawyer." Ryan looked up. "And you figure out which wife you're explaining this to first." The silence that followed was heavy and final. For the first time since he walked through the door, Ryan didn't try to defend himself. He just stood there staring at the 2 rings on the counter. One from our wedding, one from the wedding he had yesterday. 2 lives, 2 promises, both broken in the same kitchen. And for the first time since this started, I felt something strange settle inside me. Not relief, not happiness, but clarity. Ryan had spent a year building a lie so big he thought he could live inside it forever. Instead, he'd destroyed everything, and now he had to live with the wreckage.